Ben,
Chezi, how's it going?
thank God. Um, we were cut off towards the end of the summer, and
hmm
which was quite lovely. I hope you had a good time. You're also coming here soon, no?
Yeah, November, beginning of November.
Okay, I'm excited for that.
hmm
We're in the beginning of the holiday season as Rosh Hashanah, the New Year, has come and gone. I hope you had a meaningful and enjoyable holiday.
Yeah, I hope for yourself as well. It's nice.
Uh, yeah, full of drama. Right after this meeting, I have a
hmm
meeting with the synagogue, with our synagogue, the breakaway synagogue, which prayer service are people going to. So,
hmm
um, but after I sent out a message, I spoke in synagogue and I spoke about how, like, unity through diversity, right? We don't have to be the same, but we should try to be working together. All those good stuff. But this uh, this Shabbat, I'm going to a meeting to see if we could have everyone come and sit together and we could all pray together.
hmm
Because definitely for the holidays, I think it's important to us to show for ourselves unity, and then maybe later on we could go our own ways again throughout the year. We'll see, but hopefully it'll be successful.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so we took a big break from Shema. It's okay. Is it all highlighted? Is it off? Yeah, it's off. The highlights off. Okay, so as you recall, we went through the prayer of we spoke about prayer, why we're praying, who we're praying. We did that whole beautiful intro, and then we went through the prayer of Yotzer Or, right? The creator of
hmm
lights, right? Which we said was really like, this spiritual progression of God and nature. And then we spoke about Ahava Rabbah, right? Everlasting love from God. And this is really God in the soul, right? And now we have the Shema Yisrael, which is really declaring the oneness of both of these ideas of, right, the agentic and the arenic, God's, the tetragrammaton and Elohim or El Shaddai. There's different ways of looking at it, but basically these two prayers are bringing us up to the crescendo of two of these things molding together, right? Habocher b'amo Yisrael ba'ava, as we say that he who chooses Israel with love, right? I believe we spoke about how that, the divine chosenness, right?
Goodness.
It's really that we realize that we're coming into this relationship with love. We're being invited into this relationship with love and God, and it brings up like this responsibility, right? And it's a very big statement also from God that God is not only creating the world and stepping back, but he's actually involved. He's choosing. He's making a selection, right? And he's not only revealing to us his laws, right? He's actually entering into a relationship with us as well. And the word we're going to go into right now, the Shema Yisrael, right? Like we said, is this declaration of this unity, the God of
Right.
light and of laws and of love. It's all one. So that's where we're moving in today, and we're continuing with the Shema. So far, we're all good.
All good. Yeah.
Okay, so no, goodbye. Shema Yisrael. I'll read it because I know Jacob's gonna be like, "Why didn't you sing it?" So, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך, בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה, אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ובשופקך, ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. Right? So, here, Israel, Adonai is our God, Adonai is one. We then pause, right? When we say we
hmm
cover our eyes, as we've spoken about many times, why we're covering our eyes, and we focus on the letter Ayin over here and Daled, right, which together make the word Ed. So when you say Shema, it's drawn out, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, and you
hmm
pronounce the Daled to stress the ayin and the dalet, who together make ed, is witness. So not only are we saying this, but we ourselves are stressing the point that we are witnesses. Again, we are the witnesses of this covenant. We are part of this covenant as well with God. We then say quietly, Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto L'olam V'ed. Blessed is his name, whose glorious kingdom is forever and ever. And then we go on to recite this first portion over here. And you shall love Adonai your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your possessions. And these words which I command you today shall be upon your heart, and you shall teach them sharply to your children, and you shall discuss them with your when you sit at home, and when you travel on the road, and when you lie down, and when you rise. And you shall bind them for a sign upon your hand, and they shall be for a totafos between your eyes. And you shall write them upon the doorstops of your house and upon your gateways. Okay, so very, very powerful verse that you and I say very often. And right, why don't we just skip over here? Here we go, back in. Okay. So, Shema Israel, right? So, this really, and I mentioned this in the past, many of the no-hides might be aware about this, but this is really not just a theological statement, right? It's really like an existential call, right? It's really, we're establishing over here sort of the fundamental principles of the Achdut, of the divine unity, right? And this is really, everything is going to form from this. When we continue saying afterwards, right? When we say that I'm loving God with all our heart and all our soul and all our might or all our possessions, that's in the context of what does this mean that it's all one, right? And we have to realize that once one understands that Hashem is one, right? That he's present in all things and he's the source of all things, then how can a person not love him, right? It's sort of the natural response. You'd be like, why am I going straight into love? But I just made this declaration where I realized that God is in all things. And once I've made such a declaration and I've internalized that, the natural reaction should be, well, you could say that there's still awe, right? You could still be like, it's a scary thing, but there's a sense which is like how glorious he is that he's involved in all these things. And there's this automatic feeling of love. The Rambam talks about this also in the Mishneh Torah, in Yesodei Torah. I'm not exactly sure which one, but he talks about when a man is going to look at the world and look at all the creations and look at God's deeds, automatically he decides that he loves God and he starts glorifying God's name as well. That this will be the natural reaction that comes out, right? Love comes from clarity. I'm really seeing God's infinite wisdom in all his creation. So in that sense, that's why we immediately go into love. And even
that's a higher level of love.
It's a high level of love because it's the natural reaction of fully understanding God. And the words themselves of Shema, right, which is, it's not just listening, it's also to understand and to internalize, right? So it's not just hearing God's, right? It's understanding this is what's leading me to this emotional attachment, right? I fully understand when we also say about when Adam knew his wife, right? Knowing her biblically, there's a deeper knowledge here too, is hearing someone in a biblical sense, fully understanding them. And this love is really not based on a reward, right? It has to do with like my self-interest. We also see that in the next paragraph, right? Which is, it's very much lishma. It's for its own sake, ultimately. Right. And we could see this as, one second, scroll down to the word here. Yeah. We could see this really in the we'll call it the Abrahamic model, the Avraham model over here, right? Which is that, what was so special about Avraham, the Sifri, which one of the commentaries connects V'ahavta to the V'ahavta of Avraham. Avraham Avinu, Abraham would make sure that everyone recognized God and loves God. That's what he was really, really pushing this, and people's reaction was kamanehu, kamane edrachav, right? How glorious God is and how glorious his ways are as well. And by basically doing great hasbara or great marketing for God that Abraham was doing at that time, people felt falling in love with this. So this is part of the love that we want to be showcasing to the world itself. Now we see different expressions over here of your heart, your soul, mo'odecha, right? Your might or your possessions. So we also want to get into what each one of these things mean. So with all your heart, b'chol levavcha, right? So the famous commentary is b'shnei yetzarcha, right? The reason it's plural in Hebrew, levavcha is plural, not just balev shelcha, is it's my good inclination and my evil inclination, right? God is involved in both of those, and that's why you should be using both of these inclinations to be loving God ultimately. And when I'm taking the Yetzer Hara, we spoke about this. What does it mean, the evil inclination? It doesn't mean actual evil, right? It's not inherently evil. It's a force of God. It's a force of the divine. It can be passion. It can be creativity. And I need to be able to harness this desire, right? And I need to integrate the Yetzer Hara in doing this. There's an example of this would be, let's say, on Shabbat, right? When we have these big meals, we have Onek Shabbat. Now you could say part of the delight of the Shabbat meal is eating this, this big hearty meal. Now you could say that I want a refined palate, right? That I'm going to know what my ceviche is, and I'm going to know what my fancy meat is as well. And I need to be able to do these things. Now, this is a physical trait, and this has to do with like a material desire, right, of eating good food, right? So the Yetzer Hatov over here, the good inclination would be the spiritual yearning I have to connect to God. The Yetzer Hara, right, the evil inclination over here is the worldly enjoyment. But if I'm connecting both of them together, right, or a classic example would be, we spoke about this once with Rav Kook about talking about the desire of, let's say, sex being like very fundamental, which is, of course, it could turn into incest. It could turn into something horrible. But if it's oriented properly, then obviously that's bringing us life into the world.
Right.
Make sense?
Yeah.
So that's b'chol levavcha, right? With all your heart, with all the full unity of your inclinations. We then have b'chol. Why does it keep bouncing? B'chol nafshecha, right? So we have it in with all of your soul, your nefesh. In this sense, we'll call it your soul, right? We spoke about nefesh in Shema Prakim that's a deeper understanding. But we gave that, but here we'll talk about it as soul, right? So even if God is taking our life, right, this is really the ultimate call for loyalty, really. And that's the famous example in the Gemara, which is afilu notel nafshecha, even if he takes your soul. And we have the very famous story of Rabbi Akiva, right, that he was being put out to death, and they were combing his skin with these combs, these metal rakes, and he was reciting the Shema, and his students come and ask him, Rebbe or Rabbeinu Adkan, like Rabbi, even till now, even at this point where they're literally combing your skin, is this what we're doing? So Rabbi Akiva gives this amazing answer, which is, all my life, right, I was sad. All my life, I was sad that I couldn't participate in this. I couldn't fully embody the words when it said b'chol nafshecha, that even when your soul, even when he takes your soul. And I would always wonder, when will I have the chance to actually achieve this level of commitment? And here it is. Finally, it came. And he prolonged his, when, we say here, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Eloheinu, Hashem Echad, God is one. He prolonged the word one until his soul departed. And he felt this way also, that, he was fully participating and identifying in the oneness of God in that case. And we should look at that story because it's a very, very, very powerful story of these stages of Rabbi Akiva's love, right? Like it's easy to say that he just, I mean, it might sound easy to say that he did this, right? But really, these are levels of love that stack onto each other, right? There's his famous wife, there's Rachel, right? Which it starts with his earthly love, right? Or the basic love that he has for her. Right. And she inspires him to go learn Torah. And this is what he wants to do. Right. He then develops his other level of love, right, which is his famous idea of v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, right? Love your neighbor as yourself. Right. This is, we, of course, to our Christian fellows over here, they recognize this in Jesus as well. But Rabbi Akiva was there with the greatest hits, and letting us know to love your neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
And then we reach this level of God that even at death, right, he is also still connecting to God as well. And it's important to remember that, like, and we talk about this as far as learning the Zohar, and learning the Zohar at the right age, at the age of 40, but really has to do with when someone's mature. But it's very hard to talk to someone about the love of God if he still hasn't loved a woman or loved a spouse or loved a child, right? Because these are all levels, right? I'm sure you, Ben, can testify to this, which is there's a love I had for my parents, which I felt the most intensely, right? And then I finally found someone, like, even in the world, I realized what it was to, like, love a friend. And lo and behold, finally I found, like, a love of a wife, right? That was like a whole nother level. And then I'm sure as you had your child, you realize that, like, the love I thought was, like, all encompassing is, like, dwarfed in a certain sense by, like, this love I have for this child.
But so why? Let me
Challenge.
investigate that. Like, why do you think that's true though? Like, what's deeper about it? Like, what specifically makes it so
About the love of God or the love of a child?
Well, the love of a child, of a spouse, right? You mentioned this as, like, these are steps, or they're qualitatively different. So I'm wondering, I mean, I can venture myself, and I'm wondering from your perspective, like, what makes it so different? What is it about a love of a spouse that suddenly makes you aware of something beyond and then a child? And
Well, I'm saying there's the selfish love, which is loving yourself, right? Then there's this love of the spouse, which is, like, in theory, I found love, like, in the other, right?
Mhm.
Now, even there's a certain selfish attitude to it, because, like, you're gaining back from that love, right? This is someone that's loving you and hugging you and kissing you. There's a physical element to it. The love of then the other, the neighbor, is someone that I'm not necessarily coming back from, but I recognize once I loved myself enough properly to recognize who I am, which then allowed me to create space for my wife, which would then was a whole nother level of love, which allowed me then to realize that there's other people out there, right? And once I could do all those things, right, I could then, in theory, with my wife, her and I together, each going through that process. Now that we appreciate ourselves, and because of that, we appreciate each other, and because of that, we appreciate the world, we now could, like God, create a life and bring it into this. And that allows us, in a certain sense, right? Like, what makes Chava, right? What makes Eve a mother is Cain, right? Cain comes to the world that now allows her to start feeling sort of like a God, right? She can now feel what God feels like as well. So getting to that level of knowing what it is to love a child, you can now start fathoming what it is to love God back, because you've now given sort of that, you participated in that creation of creating another life together, again, in the way we participated together with another being, right? Again, as in we realize that we ourselves are not complete, and together with something we could create one.
Yeah.
So that is a very, very profound, and that's a ladder that we deal with as humans, right? We're ascending in that sense. We're going from this human mush into the divine ultimately, right? The love that Rabbi Akiva has for Rachel, or the love that we have for our wives, this is the root that allows one to get to a place where he's capable of giving his life for God, because he truly understands and values what love means. I don't want someone just offing himself and dying for no reason, right? It could be a confused version of that kind of love. I would argue that Rabbi Akiva loving his wife, right, and that experience allows him to properly participate in the kind of love that would require even giving one's life up. But almost to say that let's say the person that hasn't participated in that love, it's not to say that he himself also can't give his life in the right circumstances for God, but it would be that level of sacrifice would be expressed less because he hasn't fully experienced love on all those other levels as well.
Yeah, makes sense.
Like the commandment from us is to love him with all our soul, right? And you could come and say, like, how do I do that? Only someone that has experienced and has worked and has done enough reps on his soul, so to speak, could fully appreciate what that means. You know what I mean? Like, everyone could run a little race, but only, like, does the marathon runner, can he appreciate, like, this next level run that he, quote unquote, would have to be giving up on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. Hamshachnu?
Shachnu.
Right. U bechol me'odecha. Okay, so with all of your, in Hebrew, really be in all of your might, but as Sfari does over here, it gives us the translation, which is Rashi's translation, which means with your wealth or with all your possessions, so to speak. And really, this is, someone just tried to join us? No. Really, this is more abstract, right? This is not really tied to a specific object over here, right? It's really the potential, also the desire of the things that I would sort of want. In Hebrew, money is mammon, which is also connected to me'otcha in a certain way, which is bechol me'otcha is bechol mamoncha, which is what I long for, also, like the values that the value that I long for, right? So here it's not just about, let's say, I donated a lot of money, right? And now I've done my deed of, let's say, with all my possessions. It's more about whatever symbolizes to me control or power. That's really where the question is, right? Because, like, only through, if I want to have true freedom, that has to do when my love for God surpasses all my other attachments and all my other wealth.
Right. So you mean, like, it doesn't have to be just money that you have. You might have influence or
correct
reputation that you were willing to give up for the sake of God, if that it came to it.
Usually that's money. You know why? I realize what happened right now. I didn't share a link. I'm sorry that I didn't send a link. Now I did. Someone wanted to join. Okay. FINU. What were you saying? You were saying something and I cut you off. I'm sorry. Right. The wealth, the power.
Yeah. It's like everything, power, meaning it could be reputation. It could be influence.
Right. Which usually was money, but correct. Reputation. Exactly. So we're in the Chol, right? So that's what we're looking at as power, right? There is another interpretation, which is, this is a Talmud interpretation, which is mo'otcha from the word moded. It's b'chol midah v'midah she'Hashem moded lecha. Jacob Blake's talking about this a lot with regards to, God is the way you're measuring other people, God is measuring you, right? So really, in that sense, in every the way we are, we have to see where we are in life right now, as like the measurement of where we are in life, or the placement. The measurement is like the wrong word. I'm trying to think what the right word in Hebrew, but midatcha, it is the right measurement. It's like sort of where you find yourself fitting in properly. So it would be, if I'm happy, or I'm sad, or I'm wealthy, or I'm sick, in all those places, I need to be in this mindset, which is gamzula tova, basically, which all this is for the good, right? So I need to be, I don't want to say like you need to be like a naive optimist, right? Which is just like just happy, but it's like this deep faith in the history of your life, and understanding that even in the darkest moments, right, it's still ultimately leading to something good. We talk about this a lot. We spoke about this obviously in the Shema.
Yeah, it's a stance rather than a what did you like rather than being pessimistic or optimistic. It's a sort of a stance.
It's a mindset.
It's a mindset of like viewing things, which doesn't mean that you necessarily need to ignore certain things, or that you just like that you deny certain things, but it helps you view them in this larger axiomatic perspective that you are holding. So everything is oriented in a
Towards that,
particular
yeah,
place.
agreed. Okay. Um, so we continue. והיו הדברים האלו אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבבך, אשר אתה מבניך ודיברת בם, שתלך בדרך ולך בדרך, ושמר במך. Right? So, and you shall love, and these words which I command you today shall be upon your heart, and you shall teach them sharply to your children, and you should discuss them when you sit in your house, when you go, and when you leave. Right? So we're back in this discussion, which is what is basically like the teaching Torah, right? It's like this like the consequence, so to speak, of love that we have over here, right?
Yeah.
So the I keep on getting these click. Oh no, it wasn't a click.
We got it.
I think I added him. Kirk.
Hello, hello. I just didn't know if you needed face confirmation because I went out for a sec, but
I think we know who you are. Doing all right?
I'm doing all right.
Glad to hear.
Let's see if you're
You buckled up?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so we're talking about Vayud Dvarim Ma'ele. So this whole section, well, the Rambam takes this whole section and really puts it into Hilchot Ahava, the laws of love in the Mishnah Torah, right? Because he doesn't see this as just a duty, right? This is ultimately like an expression, like we were saying earlier, this is an expression of love, right? Which is a love that's seeking a connection. And as far as the Rambam's concerned, it's understanding God, right? The divine mind. That's what we want to connect to, knowing God. And Hayom, when we say we have to do this today, right? This is also that this is emphasizing, because as we repeat this every day, that this is constantly being renewed, right? As Rashi always says, "Shelo yu kedvarim mishanim be'enecha," right? Like you shouldn't see this as something that's old, whereas in every day this is a renewed agreement. This is a renewed commitment, and we want the Torah to feel as fresh as possible, obviously, because it needs to be part of all our living moments, and that's why we get into it. You know, right? Which is I'm doing this every moment, when I'm walking, when I'm leaving, when I'm waking, when I'm going to sleep. So it's really the mindfulness app, right? This is the divine awareness that is like it has to permeate all my different elements of life all the time. And when we say in Aramaic, right? There's no space that's void of God. Hashem's unity is really a unity of consciousness, right? My whole life is Torah. And I've given this example in the past about my uncle, may his memory be blessed. So, on Shabbat, on Friday, when his wife my aunt was preparing food, right? He wouldn't eat any of that food because it had like Shabbat particles on it. That's the way he spoke about it, right? Because when his son and my brother went into the army, they left the study hall to go into the army, and there was a sense as if like this is now you're stopping to study. But instead, he gave a speech about expressing how, the very action itself is an embodiment of Torah study, right? So it really depends how you look at your life. And, you could say that this is, and I often say this about the TLC, that you could see, I see in the TLC a participation in Torah learning, right? So like that's time I'm using to do, just talk to my weird internet friends, or you could see it as times I'm using to learn Torah.
Yeah, and if I may, there's actually an article, I believe it was on Chabad. So is it okay if I bring a story into this that I think exemplifies this?
You could bring in the story, Kirk.
So I read on an article, I think it was on Chabad, where it was a story of Rabbi Jonathan Sachs going to Israel, going to Kfar Chabad, which is, I heard, like a Hasidic neighborhood in Israel. And he was saying, or not, it wasn't, he was saying, one of the Hasidic men was telling Jonathan Sachs that you who study secular philosophy in England, right? Because Jonathan Sachs is more, you might say, modern Orthodox as opposed to the Hasidim. There's a sense in which you think about God more than we in Kfar Chabad do, because we live our whole lives thinking about ourselves because we are thinking, how can we best be exemplars of God? Because all we know is the Hasidic lifestyle. Whereas you, who have to struggle with God as someone who studies secular philosophy in England, who's raised in a more, you might say, modern Orthodox lifestyle, have to put more conscious effort into integrating God into every facet of your life, because it's not as though God comes automatically because you weren't raised that way. Instead, because you're engaging with science and philosophy and other disciplines that are not historically studied by Hasidim very much, there's a sense in which you're actually bringing more holiness into it, because you have to actively have I believe the term is kavana. You have to have the intention of thinking about God when you're doing these things, as opposed to God coming automatically. Does that make
So
sense?
it does make sense, and that gets compressed into a statement of, in English, it's where even the righteous don't stand where the one who repents or one who returns to God, right? Because someone who was righteous all his life, in one sense, he's amazing. On the other sense, he never had to struggle, right? But one who comes from far away and finds God, right? So, like I'm saying, that's the story of Abraham at the end of the day, right? He was in the world of idols and he rejected it, right? So it's more than just God suddenly speaking to him. Rather, we spoke about this. What's the difference between the philosopher's God that is just finding God by looking at the world out there, to Abraham's God, which is searching and challenging and creating a space of doubt where God could come meet him and call out to him. So yes,
I think it's also reflected in the last few shot in the Torah that we read, right? Because Moses is telling them about the blessings and the curses, and when he's telling about the blessings, he also includes the curses, mentions the curses, and I think one of the questions that is raised is like, why is he mentioning the curses here as well? And the idea is that through these curses you can understand, right? Like the love, that what you have, the gratefulness. It's like something we spoke about it in other streams or in other places about a descent for the sake of ascent, which is true in life in general. In terms of when you lack something, is it's very often that when you lack something, you understand that you have that you are missing something, or you're seeking something specific, right? And it gives you the actual chance to go after it and appreciate it more.
I agree with that, and I think it's also in reach, right? A lot of what the last few portions are talking about. I mentioned this in my weekly portion review, which is right when the portion says choose life, right? Mm-hmm. Wouldn't it be obvious that I would choose life once you're telling me that if I do the bad things, I'll have death? Why would I want that? Yeah. And in the mystic religions, right, like death is where I ultimately, that's the next level. I joke around with my grandfather, like, he's excited for like the next stage because, like, I want to see what happens in chapter 2. On the other hand, like, so unlike the other religions, God is saying, well, there might be another dimension after death. It's choose life. It's here where you're supposed to sanctify and make all these things happen, right? You're supposed to work hard and deal with the challenges you have over here. Take the mundane and sanctify it, right? The Holy of Holies is not taking something holy and making it holier. It's taking something unholy and making it holy, which turns it to a Holy of Holies, because you've taken that potential and you've taken it to the next level. And that's also part of the co-creation that God is asking us to participate in, right? The story of Jacob's ladder, if I was a mystic, I would want it to end with them ascending. But the angels, as we know, ascend and descend. Because unlike Enoch, they are going to the top and they are bringing back down God's words to us here in the world, where we could rectify the world. But we digress in order to ascend, but we continue. Okay, so we then, after we said we're doing this whole, we're all this, this 2,000-year-old mindfulness attitude and meditation and mindset to be in, we are then hit with the tefillin, right? This binding of the body and love and the mind all together. So it's 9:12. Okay, let's get into tefillin just for a moment, because it's important. right? So what are we doing? Very, 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 and people could do, months or years worth of deep dives onto this topic. But this act is more than just symbolic, right? We have to understand the tefillin, the phylacteries, they are the embodiment of the Torah in a certain sense, right? This is like, no one does this anymore, but people used to have like photos, right, of their kids, or you still have it on your phone, right? I was going to say you have it in your wallet, but you still have it on your phone, and you show someone this and like, look at my kid, right? So the tefillin are these physical reminders of this intimate relationship we have with God. So you can imagine when I put on my tefillin and my phylacteries, it's as if I'm pointing out to people like, look at the selfie I have with God, right? This is this element I still have with it. And now, this is like a physical action, right? There's obviously, there is a discussion around what these words actually mean. Now, the oral Torah is giving us a detailed practice, right? We know that the Talmud talks about that it's definitely referring to a physical action. And you could see this also, that it's on levavecha, right? It's on your heart, right? So this is internal. Let's see if we could do this. You'll help me with this, Ben. Okay. So I would say if it's on my heart, right, this would be participate, as far as John Vervaeke's piece, this would be a participatory knowing, right? This is my inner transformation. My identity is in a relationship with Hashem, with God. Then it's yadecha, right? So this would be my arm. This is actually showing action. So this would be the procedural knowing, right? I actually have to practice it, right? And I have to realize that God is allowing me to doing this by the embodied mitzvot as well. That's why we say Judaism is a very embodied religion with all the commandments we do. We would have a necha, right? My eyes themselves, where I'm putting the phylacteries, right? So this would be my perspectival knowing, right? So I'm shaping how I'm actually seeing the world in front of me, right? I'm attuning my perception, so my consciousness to this, to the covenant of Hashem. And I also have it on my mashkof, right? Where my mezuzah is, right? This is on my first step. This would be your, this is my environment, right? This would be my propositional knowing. So this is really like a public declaration, right? This is a truth that I'm making visible that my environment and my society could see as well, right? So I'm moving from like inner awareness to an outer action to ultimately this is like giving me a social impact. But you'll tell me.
You can also position it on the mouth. I mean, the mouth is mentioned here multiple times.
Right, you're right.
Which is also
where would you place that in the action? Or is that something that I'm saying to myself? Maybe it's really like it's on all, because I'm internalizing it to myself. I'm also seeing it as an action.
I would say it's the speaking or the mezuzah, right? The mezuzah is like a material.
You're right. That's also the declaration.
And your speech is also an inscription of sorts, because it's no longer an ambiguous thought that is not actualized. Speech is actualized, and it has to come in a certain form, syntax, language, which constrains it and makes it stale to an extent, right? So, but so that's the proposition, right? It has certain power, but
I don't know if John Vervaeke is signing off on this. Yeah, this is just.
You don't think so?
we're enjoying this. Okay, so that was just we're having a little feel fun. But there's this idea, the word totfot, right? It means different things. But the interpretation I've connected to, but I'm open to other interpretations as well, is this, it's an ornament, right? It's one that you wear like on our forehead, right? And it could be associated with the ancient Eastern cultures also, like some people give it like an Egyptian origin called tatfat, but again, that could be argued upon. But this is really its positioning is supposed to signify the lens in which we see the world through, right? This is, or you could even look at it as the third eye, right? In other religions, or the little red dot that someone has on his head right over here, right? So if by placing the Torah between my eyes, I'm really training myself to view the world through the values of, well, I'll say Torah values of compassion and tzedek, justice and holiness, right? So this is really, again, it's a call for me to carry these values in my proper orientation towards God. Now, the reason why it's interesting, why I'm connected to it, as far as it being like this Egyptian ornament, is because in ancient Egypt, right, the pharaohs wore these on their crown. Depends if you were the king of the lower or the upper delta, but you had the serpent, right, on their head, right? And mummies also were wrapped like in these scrolls as well. And these are cultures, obviously, that understood the power of memory and spirit that has to be bound together to the body. So they were still trapped, though, nevertheless, in this nature relationship. Ultimately, they had the Nile that they were dependent on. They weren't depending on rain. And they had this very nature-bound relationship. And the Torah, our cultural appropriation and our response to leaving Egypt, is the Pharaoh's headboard, like his crown, or headband. I don't know if the headband is the proper word, probably crown. That's our tefillin shel rosh, right? That's our head phylacteries. And the scrolls that sort of are wrap around the mummies, these are our living mitzvot, right? These are the body commandments that we deal with. And obviously, when we're in Egyptian, and when we were Egyptian, when we're participating in that womb of bondage, right? The Jewish freedom is sort of showing what our moral responsibility is right now. And in that sense, and we talk about this on Passover, obviously, that Pesach, right, or Passover, the Exodus itself is not just a physical moment of us being liberated, but it's also like a metaphysical one, right? We are actually moving from this, fatalism, so to speak, to this really, there's an ethical choice has to be made right now. And I'll just add one more note just on these parallels between the tefillin and the crowns. In the Kabbalistic thought, there's a layer that we could add on to this, which is the crown had the vulture and the serpent, sometimes both of them together. And that could also correspond to, at least the Zohar talks about this, the Bina, understanding, which is the upper worlds, and Malchut, which is kingship, the spheres, which is the lower world. And these are the two tefillin traditions that we have. We have the Rashi tradition, which focuses on the sort of the revealed order of the things in the world. And there's Rabbeinu Tam, which emphasizes more of the hidden dimension, right? The other worlds out there. And in this sense, it really, reflects the idea that Israel, which is like the inner fruit, is emerging from Egypt, right? The klipa, the outer shell. And in some way, the Egyptians, what's the divine sparks of the Egyptian people is still alive in Israel. We are, in that sense, the rectified Egyptians, in that sense.
It's interesting. It makes me think this is totally sort of unrelated,
Sure.
But it makes me think, because especially Rabbi Sachs also alludes to this, like connects the covenantal nature of the Jews and with the U.S. and how that's kind of like the closest thing that we have.
What do you mean? Sorry.
In terms of being a country that's being a nation that's founded on principles and how the founders were particularly influenced by that and tried to embed that within the Constitution, whether implicitly or explicitly. But it makes me think that to also look at the U.S. as this like this fruit that comes out of a shell. That's the Europe of that time, and also think about like just in terms of historical event.
I think that's always happening. I think we ourselves need to shell our shells, and there's
right.
Israel needs to still manage. I mean, so I think what's interesting is right now we're looking at the whole world in this sort of emerging out of the cocoon in a certain sense. The Middle East is changing, and like even the declarations about Palestine right now. Like here you go. Like now there's England, this, that, they're coming on. Like it's like this half-baked declaration. I'm not even getting into, let's say, where I stand politically on that. My point is just like, again, we're seeing an emergence of something right now, than identity. You could talk about this in the trans movement. You could talk in all different places. We're seeing people are trying to come out with these identities. This is also, I've spoken about this in the past, about with the golden calf, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a sense which is, again, the Israelites at the time, the most powerful thing they recognize is the bull. That symbolizes nature's power, right? But even the bull ultimately puts his head down and eats, right? Like it's as if God was saying, like, if you would have been, if your statue would have been the cherubs, then we wouldn't have had a problem. But like, you were still locked sort of in nature in that certain sense. And like, there's this shell, right? I mean, the Kabbalah talks about this often, right? This klippa that we need to take off. And that is the world that we're living in, right? Or even being black pilled, right? So to speak, or red pilled, so to speak, right? Everyone's sort of, it's funny because this is something that emerged recently, being black pilled or red pilled, which is a phenomenon, which is a cultural reference from 1999 of The Matrix, right? Mm-hmm. Which the brothers, the Coen brothers, making that movie is heavily based on Kabbalistic ideas. So like, it's all about people realizing that we are living in that sense, in a simulation, right? So like, the klipa, or it's just you seeing like more of the code. It starts becoming more obvious. And the more of the code you see, the more you can manipulate the world around you, not in a bad way, but stopping the bullets, or choosing life, or realizing how the actions we have, the things we do in this world, how they ripple and they have an effect in this world. All that is all manifest in that idea.
Right. But the only thing I have to add off the top of my head to that is I thought The Matrix was some Wachowski brothers, not the Coen brothers.
Sorry. You're right. Well, it's now the sisters, not the
Coen brothers. The only thing that I would say to that is that it stops somewhere, right? Because I mean, you might see more and more of the code, but then you might have the sense that, hey, I can control this, or I can do something here, which is one sense true, right? Because you know more about it. So you perceive and you gain more freedom, but at some point also you also realize that there is so much more far down that you don't understand. So like, you keep hitting these other layers of ignorance that then takes you to this to, I think, what we're also saying in the Shema, this sense of like this submission, humility, understanding that it's all part of something that's much, much bigger than myself and what I can understand.
But that's why we close our eyes, because we realize we really can't understand it. And that's why what is the indication of Moses's, according to Maimonides, highest? Why was he at the highest level? Because he knew that he didn't know. Right? He himself knew that, like you just said, he realized at some point, after being like, a Google levels deep, that it just goes a Google level deeper. Like it's only more than this, right? And you're right saying that, like, at some point you could think you could control it, right? You have an Agent Smith that decides that he's going to do whatever he wants. You're right. You can't.
Right. It's always like that. What is that? It's the Dunning-Kruger effect. It's like you don't know anything, and then you realize something. You think you know everything, but then you realize, whoa, I don't like this.
So the Torah early on tells you you're going to find a lot of truth and energies in sacrifices, even human sacrifices, and blood and incense. Incense. But like we said many times, the only place you could participate with that is in the temple when it's oriented. Do blood rituals, even have the cherubs, right? Even have the quote unquote statue, have the idolatry there. Right? The Torah is not blind, and even once you surpass that, right? Aaron's sons, right? Super holy. Now, if you want to be fully holy, guess what's going to happen? You're going to get burnt. Not even necessarily a bad thing, but like we said, God is saying choose life. They're burnt now, and they might be like, that's it. Like now we're in with God, and we're like in this super high place, and that might even be true. But God is saying that's not what I'm looking for. Just like I'm telling also the monk, right? The Nazarite, sorry, who realized he's like, I got to step back so I could be like, I could get to this holier level. That's amazing. And you did that. You still have to bring a sin offering, right? Because in order to do that, you have to detach yourself from this world. So even those who quote unquote see more also have to be reined in many times.
Yeah, and if I may, so when this question of God's unknowability, I'm a little bit confused as to Jewish doctrine on a certain question, which is, are you familiar with the debate between the notion of univocivity versus non-univocivity in regards to religious language?
I'm sorry, you were cut off there. What did you say?
Are you familiar with the notion of univocivity versus non-univocivity in regards to religious language?
Univocivity?
I think you just made up that word.
So I meant to say like unikiv. I forgot. It's like the idea was religious language is univocal or not. It's like whether it describes God directly or whether it's only analogous. It's basically the idea like when you say God is good, is that the same
I
type
know
of
what
good?
univocal means. I'm looking for like the univocal philosophy.
Yeah. Well, but I was just curious whether Judaism considers religious language regarding God univocal or not.
No.
Okay.
No, you'll have different means with how someone uses the word nefesh in Chabad, or whether how Chabad interprets the Rambam, or how a Brisker interprets the Rambam. So you'll have many. I mean that's part of the criticism of Maimonides, right? Because the rabbis come and say, according to Maimonides standards, a lot of these rabbis who have spoken about God, like saying like, like large hands, or like I'm saying big, like large shoulders, they themselves are now considered heretics according to Maimonides standards. So we're definitely not univocal about that. There's many different interpretations of how people understand certain words, but it's always the case. It's all within the 70 facets of the Torah, and those 70 facets, right, which like you could say it's an arbitrary number, they only get interpreted through the tools that the Torah can get interpreted through, right? So while there is a lot of flexibility, right, so it's not univocal, but it's not anything you want.
Yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, I'm sorry for mispronouncing at the first part. Sometimes
You didn't. You humble us. We know less, but unfortunately,
I was not going to joke about my ignorance.
And I got to run to another synagogue meeting. But I'm glad, Ben, that we got to do this. Kirk, I'm glad you got to come back. Yeah. We finished the first portion of the Shema. We will continue next time with Vayayim Shema, and we will go on from there. Once we're done with the Shema, we move on to the standing prayer.
And two things. So is next week going to be on Thursday or on Wednesday?
Next week. Let's see.
There hasn't been streaming recently.
Yom Kippur, so
Wednesday is Yom Kippur, so it's not going to be that, and Thursday is Yom Kippur, so it's not going to be Thursday night. And then after that, we could do what?
I'm off Tuesday, Wednesday, so I might be
okay.
Thursday.
So that means the 15th.
Okay.
The 15th.
And did you
15th you're off as well?
Yeah, it's 2 days here.
Right. Nachon, the lies you live in. We could do the 16th if you wanted to, but again right after Chag, or we could do the 22nd.
We can plan on the 16th.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's
in the meantime, while you didn't stream, did you watch those videos that I sent, or?
Okay, guys, I gotta go to this meeting. Jason, I see you're here. Love you, buddy. We'll talk.
But
Pow. Smack.